describing an underwater UFO as large as a football field, moving at hundreds of miles per hour underwater.
Have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself of non-human origin craft?
Yes, I personally interviewed those individuals.
Do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
Biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Aliens exist and President Trump knows about it.
The United States and Israel
is also
have been in contact with a group of aliens for years.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology.
We are not all to be traced back to one blob of germplasm.
And the implant is finally removed.
There's no evidence how the object got inside the body.
Can you comment on the drones?
Our military knows where they took off from. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
God damn. So I'm such a bad streamer, bro. Like I'm basically muting my mic every time I'm playing the intro, and I forget to demute myself, which is quite a pain in the, you know. So welcome to the stream, guys. Welcome to the stream, guys. We are basically following up on the second part of our beloved guy, Jason Samosa. I always want to say, oh my god, now I forgot his name, bro. Jason Momoa. Oh my goodness. I mean, you kind of look pretty similar, you know what I mean? Like, type of human. Well, let's see. I think it's gonna be pretty incredible, as you can imagine, because that shit was pretty good. Pretty good. We made it halfway through. And I mean, we didn't really even started to talk about the UFOs, technology, how the space program was founded, how NASA got created, and like all that stuff, you know. So we are just beginning. And I did see that Jason had actually, like, he's been doing a live stream about like how Tom DeLonge was actually founding, I think, the space program. And like, dude, I really wish I would have had the time to watch it at this moment. I did see him doing it while he was live. So I cannot wait to watch that as well. As I told you guys, I'm super thankful for this documentary because basically I feel like this is probably a good summary of so many books my boy was reading. So I really appreciate you for this, brother. Thank you so much, bro. So yeah, for now you didn't hate me, so I guess it's alright for you if I'm live streaming this documentary, bro. Please, if not, let me know, man. Yeah, man, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to offend you because I know how much work it is, brother. So seriously, hit me up, let me know if you have any problems with that. Let me know, man. Well, without further ado, I would say we're gonna hop into that thing because it could be that someone's gonna ring at my door. So my headphones, you know, they're like on one side, they're a little bit off because, yeah, I'm waiting for someone. Just for a quick interruption. It's not gonna be too long, so I'm sorry already if that's gonna happen. But other than that, I would say let's not lose any time. So get your popcorn ready, guys. Because now we're gonna hip into the real shit. Now we know how the Nazis... Well, not just the Nazis. I mean, that's the thing, right? Now we know how history... Like what actually happened and how we think all those Nazis, allies, the Americans and all that kind of shit is like a different separate thing going on. But in reality though, those guys been doing things together for quite a long time. To no one's surprise really, I think. Okay guys, let's go. Oh yeah.
As General Patton's Third Army swept through Europe, they weren't just finishing off the Nazi military, they were also collecting the spoils of war, the powerful technology that the Nazis had developed throughout those years. Some of their findings were astonishing.
Oh yes.
The V-2 ballistic missiles, revolutionary liquid fuel motors, and gyroscopic stabilization technology all helped push the United States rocket program forward by about 10 years. They also found radio-controlled guidance systems, infrared night vision, chemical nerve agents, all stuff where the Nazis had leapt far ahead of the Allies. And then there were Messerschmitts, Horten flying wings, and other breakthrough aerospace technology. All of these findings created an explosive accelerant for the US tech tree in the middle of the 20th century.
Oh my god, guys. I'm so sorry. But I forgot something. In case you're new to the stream, guys, I welcome you here. And I'd like to see you here, spending your time with me, your precious time, so we can discover shit like this together. You're not alone, brother or sister. You're not alone. We're in this boat together. So consider subscribing to the channel to help me grow, man, to reach more people, to make this happen and continue researching stuff like this. I'm sorry for the interruption. I'm very good at interrupting at very bad moments, so I'm sorry. Let's continue, guys.
And in the vein of finding critical breakthroughs, just as General Patton was due to head to Berlin for the final confrontation, he took a strange beeline to Pilsen in Czechoslovakia, to the Škoda works. Why? Well, perhaps he knew then what we know now. The most important Nazi you've never heard of, Obergruppenführer Hans Kammler, was running a top-secret project there, developing the most advanced technology in the Reich. The head of the Škoda works, Dr. Wilhelm Voss, would claim that the team worked on ideas that were unthinkable and unbelievable, and thus imaginary, because the field had totally abandoned conventional physical laws. Can you imagine what General Patton and his team would have found when they finally walked into that top secret research facility? Well, actually I can. It was probably pretty unimportant. You see, Kammler reported into Wilhelm Voss, and Voss's Škoda works had been grafted into Alfred Krupp's in...
Just want to tell you guys, Kammler guy, important guy. Nobody talks about him. If you're going to, if you listen to history lessons in school, I don't know if that boy has been mentioned, but he's been dealing with the real interesting projects, I'm telling you, man. I wish I would have known about that guy, when I was very, very young, teenage age.
Industrial empire. Krupp had been part of that inner circle that was briefed at the Maison Rouge a full 180 days earlier. This gave Krupp a 6-month head start. And given that the Škoda works was at the epicenter of some of the Reich's most staggering breakthroughs, it is unthinkable that it wasn't a top priority for this vast exfiltration exercise. The truth is that by the time Patton steamrolled through Europe 6 months later, all the good stuff would have been gone. The V2s and the rocket technology were just the leftovers, which begs the question, what was the good stuff? Well, a lot of Nazis would come out after World War II, claiming that the Reich had been in the middle of multiple staggering breakthroughs around flying discs. Giuseppe Belluzzo, a member of Mussolini's cabinet, would claim that flying discs were designed and studied in Germany and Italy as early as 1942. Then there was Richard Mueter, a Nazi engineer who claimed that he had worked on a 42-meter wide saucer codenamed the V7 in Breslau and Prague.
Oh yeah.
Then there were engineers George Klein, Klaus Habermohl, and Rudolf Schreiber, all who claimed to be working on a disc with a rotating outer rim in a facility near Prague. Engineer Joseph Andreas Epp would claim that their work was based on his designs. It would also be discovered that Austrian inventor Victor Schoberger had been recruited by the Nazis to work on a novel propulsion system for a fascinating new type of machine.
Yeah, man.
Schoberger's diaries reveal to us what these machines were. They were dubbed the Flying Saucer. And whilst we're on the topic of novel propulsion, Dr. Ronald Richter would come out saying that he was working on fusion technology in 1942 in the Junkers factory.
I just gotta add something. Maybe he's gonna mention that. So if I'm, saying that now a little bit too early, I'm sorry for that. But I gotta say it's pretty important because this is definitely stuff. I'm quite sure that this is also coming from the research Joseph Farrell's been doing on that thing about the flying saucers of the Nazis in Prague. And I do think that people, which I love, because you mainly find, or not mainly, but many times you research that Nazi thing, you find those real things, right? Real type saucers, different types and shit. But they're actually not really talking about those. Oh no, wait. The Haunebu things, right? Vril also, the Haunebu things. Like many things of those claiming saucers are actually, I think, being done by like a weird group from Austria way later, which seems to be kind of just fake-ish, So there are no real papers, documents that are showing proof of any of those. But there have been actually those prototypes, which are, but probably not working with like, 0-point energy, stuff like that. Still flying saucers, but not as advanced as many people are claiming, which I find super good that Joseph Farrell was mentioning that, to make that clear, that he's drawing a line between those flying saucers that had actually supposedly been there and those super advanced 0-point energy type things, So it's incredible that, yeah, man, it's pretty detailed actually, if you get into it.
In Dessau, this was fusion technology that could potentially lead to clean energy, and that in turn could be used for advanced propulsion and new types of weapons. And then, of course, there are the fascinating rumors that were passed on by the likes of SS General Jakob Sporenberg and some of his other colleagues about the mysterious Bell project in progress in an underground mine in Wenceslas, Poland. Even just recently, there's been even more anecdotal evidence added to this pile of fascinating testimony.
Really?
Just look at the recent UFO drops coming out of the Trump administration. A fascinating find is the testimony of a Nazi called Paul Pearl. A declassified FBI document reveals that he came forward in the 60s, alleging that the Nazis had been working on a saucer-shaped craft during the war that was 21 feet in diameter, radio-controlled, and mounted several jet engines around the exterior portion of the craft.
And I think this is what he was talking about. So no real, anti-propulsion type shit. Not saying that it hasn't been around back then, but,
He further describes the exterior portion as revolving around the dome in the center, which remained stationary. Another saucer where the outer rim rotates independent of the center. Absolutely fascinating. But perhaps inside of your mind, you're asking an important question, which is why would the Nazis in particular have become so motivated in pursuing so many projects to try and create craft like this? Well, to answer that, we should probably go back further to 1933, when reports describe a lenticular disc crashing in Magenta, Italy.
It's a 90-year cover-up.
Just about, yeah.
90 years.
1933 was the first recovery in Europe, in Magenta, Italy. They recovered a partially intact vehicle.
Yeah, what else did Richard Bissell tell you?
He said this didn't start last week. This has been going on. He mentioned that in 1933 in Magenta.
He did?
Yes.
Richard Bissell mentioned the 1933 Magenta crash?
Yes.
That's amazing.
The testimony from the Magenta event is that it was a single piece of smooth brushed metal with no rivets, bolts, or welding. And some testimony even claims that 2 humanoid bodies were recovered from within. Documentation found by researcher Roberto Pinotti indicates that Mussolini ordered absolute silence on the presumed landing of an unknown aircraft under threat of arrest and trial by the State Security Court. A secret study would be set up according to these documents, with Guglielmo Marconi at its head. By the way, Marconi and Giuseppe Belluzzo would both serve in the Senate at the same time and would also hold overlapping professorships at the University of Rome as well. And remember, it was Belluzzo who said that flying discs were studied and designed in Germany and Italy. And none of this is even to touch on the peculiar testimony of Hermann Oberth, the father of the Nazi rocket program that built the V2. After the war, he would discuss flying saucers, stating that we cannot take credit for our record advancement in certain scientific fields. We have been helped by people from other worlds. Well, I think by now we have enough testimony here to construct a really good Hollywood movie. But before we do that, we should probably address the elephant in the room. If the Nazis really did create flying discs and new forms of propulsion, why did none of this appear on the battlefield to turn the tide of war? The first thing to say here is don't assume that it didn't. Aerospace and defense expert Nick Cook actually found United States Army Air Force documentation describing a Nazi technology called the Windhund that sounds suspiciously similar to some of the Foo Fighter phenomena described in World War II. It's not out of the question that some of the anomalous activity experienced during the war could have been the result of really advanced German breakthroughs, and that even after the war, when the United States presumably got their hands on it, they wouldn't have wanted anyone else to know what they now had. So don't rule out that some of this stuff could have been German tech. But beyond cases like this, the question of why disc craft weren't used in the war often comes with a false dichotomy. Either the Nazis did have the technology and we would have seen it in use, or they didn't have it and that's why we didn't see it. But there's actually a middle ground that is much, much more compelling. What if the Nazis did make remarkable breakthroughs, but the real progress wasn't quite what you would have thought? This is exactly what Dr. Jacques Vallée would be encouraged to consider when he spoke with a senior member of the United States Defense and Intelligence community that he calls Major Murphy for the sake of anonymity. Here is Vallée recounting his conversation with Major Murphy. In 1943, he said, as we sat in his study, we already had evidence that several countries were working on circular aircraft that they hoped to develop into secret weapons. The Germans were also doing advanced research on controlled electrical discharges and controlled lightning, and tried to combine these things together. On the surface, if you just look at a few isolated cases, like scientists arguing about UFOs, well, I agree it doesn't mean anything. But suppose somebody had obtained a device by the end of the war, which perhaps wasn't a very effective weapon. Perhaps it couldn't fly very effectively, couldn't carry guns and bombs, but had other properties. For instance, it could emit radiation that caused paralysis and hallucinations as it flew over an area, so that the witnesses exposed to it would think that they saw the phantasms of their own imagination.
God damn.
Suppositions, I thought. Assumptions. We're going to need more than that to explain the UFO problem. Major, I can't believe that some Nazi group had managed to survive secretly with this kind of technology in its power.
Well,
who says anything about the Nazis? I am suggesting that other groups have become involved. Germany was simply a little ahead of other people. A lot of people became involved. Industrial concerns, laboratories engaged in psychotronic research. Think about that for a second. What is being suggested here is that the real breakthrough wasn't flying.
Gonna make a pause here. Hello, Missy. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you. I'm glad you made it. I mean, I gotta be honest, I'm super bad right now with being on a regular, you know, so every now and then I'm throwing in a random live stream. So yeah, man, trying to better myself, but you know, pretty busy time, so kind of rough though. Getting there though. So yeah, thank you for being around. Appreciate the support a lot. Appreciate you a lot. So hope you're doing well too.
Discs. It was the psychotronic effect and mind manipulation generated by a craft that wasn't really able to fly that well. And that was in 1943. So come with me now a full year later to 1944 to the Maison Rouge meeting that we discussed earlier. Do you think that this project, which we've just talked through, would have been one of the priorities to exfiltrate out of Germany? I think the answer has to be yes. And also consider what Major Murphy emphasizes. Other groups became involved, industrial concerns and laboratories. Notice he doesn't mention anything about the government. If this tech was part of the evacuation plan, that would mean that the fraternity, this secret brotherhood, would gain a monopoly on this critical scientific knowledge, as well as other deeply held secrets. And consider also that it's totally possible that all of these stories about flying discs could just be a distraction and a cover story designed to draw our attention away from other staggering breakthroughs that desperately needed to be kept hidden. And if that's the case, we should assume that all of these projects would have been moved out of Germany to be under the control of this transnational fraternity. And when you really meditate on this reality, it's utterly devastating. These were the spoils of a war that cost the lives of 70 million people.
That's what I did actually recently. After watching the first part of this documentary, man, it's... If you think about it in that way, as you said, dude, so many people died because they were playing Monopoly and they just let those people kill themselves against each other for, you know, let's say, not like no reason, but I mean, those people don't have, like, they didn't have any clue what's been going on in reality, you know? So it makes it even worse, man. It's not that the war itself was like bad. Like, there are no words to describe how bad it was, but looking at it from this perspective makes it even worse. Man, our history is pretty fucked up, man, I'm telling you. It's quite hard to digest that, to really let that sink in. No good, man, no good.
And nearly $10 trillion in today's money. Those spoils belonged to the peoples who had fought in those wars, but they were stolen by private interests, and they got away with it. And this is where we really need to ask the question: who truly controls the UFO secret? Is it the government and the aerospace companies? Or is it this group that has always sat behind these entities and controlled them? And should it be any surprise to us to find hints in the journals of Jacques Vallée that maybe indicate that he also favors this latter thesis? In Forbidden Science Volume 6, he recounts a fascinating conversation with Bob Bigelow. We did agree the cover-up must be the work of a supra-national group, a brotherhood, he said, rather than one single agency or country. What an interesting use of the word brotherhood. But before you start wondering whether or not he's really referring to the fraternity, let me read you one more entry, this time from much earlier in Forbidden Science Volume 4. Here, Vallée is in conversation with Kit Green in the early 90s, and they're discussing how the cover-up actually works. After a bit of back and forth, Vallée states, "It works like a brotherhood then?" Kit responds, "Yes, and it's hidden away in a contractor's basement somewhere, not in the government. And all the brothers, come to think of it, are people in their 70s, older gentlemen." Vallée then notes in his journals, "I silently wondered where they had been between 1939 and 1945.
Where did they go?
I don't think you can get much clearer than that. And think to yourself, what kinds of people would have been in their 70s in 1991? Well, Nelson Rockefeller had passed away. Allen Dulles, Thomas McKittrick, and John McCloy were also dead. But David Rockefeller, the brother of Nelson Rockefeller, was 75. And Nelson Rockefeller's post-war protege, Henry Kissinger, was 68. Kissinger has a lot of fascinating data points tying him to the UFO issue. You can easily connect him to Majestic 12, to the retrieval of unknown objects via Project Moondust, and even claims that he was overseeing projects for off-world technology at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I highly recommend watching Jesse Michaels' excellent deep dive on Henry Kissinger, which details a lot of fascinating information on why he may have been a central figure, or indeed the central figure, in the post-war UFO operation. Most importantly, there is no one closer to the Rockefeller-Dulles brotherhood we've been dealing with. Just to go back to the core point here, Vallée is clearly pointing to a supranational brotherhood, or fraternity, being in control of this issue globally. That brotherhood is implied to have been up to something deeply suspicious or unusual during World War II. And based on everything we've covered, there are tons of reasons to think that the Rockefeller-Dulles fraternity fits the bill. I know that what I'm sharing here isn't necessarily completely new information. People have long suspected the Rockefellers, the Dulleses, and other individuals to be deeply involved in this issue, but I hope the way that I've laid it out for you makes it almost impossible to avoid the reality that they really were at the center of this pre-Roswell, and it's deeply, deeply important. They owned the government before the war. They could basically do whatever they wanted without any repercussions and without anyone being able to control them. They controlled intelligence during the war. And of course, importantly, they helped the Nazis evacuate all of their interests after the war. Ultimately, this makes it undeniable that this group must be the linchpin on this topic, this secret fraternity, this brotherhood who were up to truly dubious things during the war. But there is a twist here, and it's a fascinating one, because just as this was happening, they would face a huge blow. The wartime intelligence agencies would be shut down. Once the war was over, the public were outraged at the idea of a permanent intelligence establishment. And so those agencies would ultimately be spun down. Donovan and Stevenson had been lobbying FDR for the OSS to persist as a permanent intelligence agency. But once that information leaked to the press, FDR was under enormous pressure from the public. The OSS was to be shut down. The Special Operations Executive in England also would be spun down and reintegrated into the Foreign Office. And with both of those agencies gone, the BSC no longer needed to exist. And then finally, the Office for the Coordination of Inter-American Affairs, Nelson Rockefeller's private fiefdom, would have its functions wrapped into the State Department. Donovan, Dulles, Stevenson, Hambro, and Rockefeller, and all of their friends, were suddenly out of work. But let me tell you something. They were not out of ideas.
Of course not. Just changing the chessboard, probably, you know. Bringing new figures in and things.
According to documentation from the National Archives, the moment Truman issued his executive order to terminate the OSS, Wild Bill Donovan sprang into fervent action. In the few days remaining to the agency, General Donovan ordered Lieutenant Edward J. Putzel to assist him in microfilming select documents from Donovan's safe files for his own action and personal use. Donovan and Putzel worked under pressure of time with a Kodak Recordac camera to produce 131 rolls of 35mm microfilm from the records of Donovan's files. Due to haste, the quality of the microfilm was poor and the records often misarranged.
Oops.
In addition, Donovan also obtained for his own use 62 rolls of 16mm microfilm of select cable files. What was in these files? Well, we don't really know, but whatever it was must have been pretty important to Donovan and his friends. And it's fascinating that these critical files end up at Donovan's offices at the Rockefeller Plaza.
Oopsie.
Of course they do. But the really juicy details are still to come. By August of 1945, Donovan and Stevenson already knew that Truman was going to shut down the OSS. So isn't it curious that in that very same month, a fascinating and mysterious organization is founded? It's called the World Commerce Corporation.
Never heard about that one. Man, so many companies, so many figures, bro. It's really hard to follow up, you know? Man, again, I wish I would have this super brain to just hear a name once and then I have it in my mind, but man, it's so many names. And so many ties, so many connections they have with each other, like all those relationships. He's that guy, uncle, son, nephew, you know, it is what it is, though.
The World Commerce Corporation may well be the most important organization you've never heard of. It was incorporated in Panama of August of 1945 and was immediately stuffed with very familiar faces. Leading the organization were William Stevenson, Wild Bill Donovan, Allen Dulles, Sir Charles Jocelyn Hambro, and Nelson Rockefeller.
God damn.
Truman had shut the intelligence agencies down, but in turn, they had risen again, and this time as a private company beyond his control.
Just saying, this is what I mean. And this happens all the time. To this day, it's no difference. It's always the same shit. Like, seeing a change in government, it's always the same guys in the background. Never really changing, you know? So, in the end, you can make your own thoughts out of that, you know? Come to your own conclusion. But, yeah, man, it's something to keep in mind. It's never really changing, you know?
In an astonishing sign of direct continuity, the World Commerce Corporation's office address, as it was listed in its incorporation papers, was exactly the same as William Stevenson's wartime BSC address at the Rockefeller Plaza. They weren't even trying to hide it. This was a direct continuation of wartime intelligence gone private. Legendary author and researcher Peter Dale Scott would go so far as to describe the World Commerce Corporation as a private intelligence service representing wealthy Americans like Nelson Rockefeller.
Wow.
Just based on the presence of these 5 men alone, the World Commerce Corporation should be a topic of serious study. I mean, imagine if tomorrow the CIA, NRO, MI6, and NSA were all shut down, and the leaders of those organizations emailed all of their sensitive documents to themselves and then started a private organization the next day using an offshore address.
It's insane.
There would be outrage. But what I've just described doesn't even do justice to the sheer scale of what was going on with the WCC. The truth is, it's similar, but actually much, much worse. That's because the World Commerce Corporation wasn't just about taking intelligence agencies private. It also merged that private intelligence with the interests of the most powerful figures from Britain, America, and even the post-war Nazi state. On the British side of the Atlantic, the World Commerce Corporation would have the following people as directors and investors. Viscount Leathers, one of the most powerful men in Britain, a confidant of Churchill, and someone who had massive influence over transport and shipping. The 3rd Earl of Selborne, Roundell Palmer, he ran the Special Operations Executive prior to Hambro and used that position to support Nazi groups whilst blocking support to French resistance groups. Perhaps that motif sounds somewhat familiar.
Well,
then there was Lord Beaverbrook, who ran the Daily Express.
Give me 1 second. Those names are crazy. I gotta say I'm not too familiar. Oh my god, English. I'm sorry. Been talking a lot today already. But like those British English names, especially the old ones. Viscount Leathers, Earl of Selborne, Lord Beaverbrook. Not bad, man. Not bad, guys.
Press, at the time, the most successful mass circulation newspaper in the world, along with other newspapers. Beaverbrook was also a confidant of Churchill and someone who was somewhat soft on the Nazis in the approach to the war. Also on the board was Lord Semple, an individual who had been found to have been transmitting sensitive information to the Japanese over and over again, even during the course of the war.
Dude.
He was caught, but Churchill didn't take any action. Then there was Sir Harold Wenner. He was effectively the uncle of Prince Philip and was deeply embedded into the inner circles of the royal family. Then there was also Sir Colin Gubbins and Sir Tony Keswick, both who held senior positions at the SOE, and Keswick also a director of the Bank of England, Sir William Roots, who ran Roots Automotive, Sir Campbell Stewart, who ran the Times newspaper, and fascinatingly, also Ian Fleming, the man who would write the James Bond novels. We'll come back to him in part 2. Over on the American side.
God damn, this is just part 1? Jason, why are you cooking so much? You're like stirring the pot. God damn, this is part 1? Oh my god. I feel like after this I don't have to listen to anything anymore because I just know everything, you know? If I remember it. But man, this is quite mind-blowing. Man. I so much have to get this book, seeing it down there in the corner on the right, you know, next to his elbow from Joseph Farrell. Seeing the Nazi sign there makes me curious.
There was Richard Mellon, the man behind Gulf Oil and the Mellon Bank, now known as BNY Mellon.
I gotta pause the stream for a second. I'll be right back, guys. Your apology. My apology, sorry. All right. I'm back. I'm sorry. It was ringing at the door, so I had to go. Okay. Take a deep breath. Let's continue with part 1 of the series. Almost everyone is in there, man. I swear. This is... I'd love to... One thing. I'd actually love to show this to... like a normal historian, you know, like a history researcher. Like, what would they say? Because you cannot really deny that this happened if they look into it. I wonder if they would just deny that thing straight away just because, you know? I'd love to know that.
There was J. Russell Forgan from Glor Forgan, which would soon merge with the DuPont financial interests. Then there was future CIA director John McCone, whose Bechdel-McCone company had helped finance the World Commerce Corporation. Also as an interested party was John J. McCloy. After the war, McCloy would run the World Bank, act as High Commissioner of Germany, have a senior role at Chase Manhattan, sit on the Warren Commission, have a seat on the board of Fordham University, and also a senior role at the Council on Foreign Relations. There is no one else who is more Mr. Establishment than John J. McCloy, and he was actively involved in the World Commerce Corporation. There was also Jay Cavanaro, who represented Transamerica, a company which had significant holdings in Citibank. There were also key people from the Morgan dynasty, Daniel de Mecanal, and also Joseph C. Grew, the nephew of JP Morgan. Also on the board were James D. Mooney, the man we mentioned earlier who worked for General Motors, and Edward Stettinius Jr., the wartime Secretary of State, also a vice president of General Motors, and also Floyd Odlum, who worked for the Atlas Corporation and had a majority stake in Convair. Finally, as one more name before we round out and get to some deeper analysis, there was also some papal aristocracy on the board. Prince Boncampagno Boncampagni Ludovici was a member of the papal aristocracy related to Pope Gregory. He also, through his family, had connections with a man called Ciano Galazio, who was almost certainly deeply involved with the Magenta crash and had inside knowledge of everything that had happened relating to that crash. There are so many other names that I simply don't have time to mention. People who worked for the OSS and the SOE, people from the highest echelons of British and American society. We could go on for so long, but we simply don't have time. The most important thing to reckon with here, though, is that the World Commerce Corporation wasn't just about taking wartime intelligence and privatizing it. It was also about fusing that with the biggest powers in finance, oil, the aristocracy, the media, and even the Vatican. So what happens when you put all of those things together? Well, as it turns out, quite a lot. The World Commerce Corporation was involved in so many different things that it's hard to grapple with. Ostensibly, the organization was positioned as a barter and trade company, enabling poorer countries to import goods without needing dollars to do so. The idea was to create a global trade network to ensure Western influence in third world countries to act as a stalwart against communism. But the reality of what was going on with the World Commerce Corporation was far, far more interesting and far, far more mysterious. One of the first places where we see that mystery coming to the surface is where we look at the World Commerce Corporation's initial funding. According to Eustace Mullins, the World Commerce Corporation was initially funded with about $10 million of Nazi money that had ended up in the Office for Strategic Services hands. He writes that this money could not be returned to the United States government without stating where it had come from. As proceeds from dealings in gold and jewels, an inquiry could provoke a congressional investigation. And Mullins isn't the only one to highlight a suspicious Nazi origin behind the World Commerce Corporation. Author Ralph Gannis also questions the timing of the World Commerce Corporation's creation. He writes, "A major target of Safe Haven was a vast German corporate entity known as Sociedad Financiera Industrial, or Sofindus for short. The corporation also served as cover for a vast Nazi intelligence network that extended into South America. In the field, Sofindus was controlled out of Madrid, Spain, with tentacles in France, North America, and South America. Later, he would add, Sofindus companies were revamped and incorporated into the World Commerce Corporation. Remember, Gannis is describing Sofindus as a vast Nazi intelligence apparatus, which has now been integrated into the World Commerce Corporation. So does this mean that we're looking at a fusion of Western intelligence and German intelligence into one coherent entity?
This is what I've been thinking for a very long time, to be honest. Because, I mean, I did watch many interviews with, like, journalists and Joseph Farrell, of course. And it seems to be the case that Germans have been, slowly making their way into the American government, So, I mean, the history of the Americans anyways is quite like Europeans going to America, fucking up the indigenous people to claim their land and say, now it's ours. Well, and that's how they did the same thing. Again. Well, not again. It's not the same thing, but you know what I mean? It's kind of like Germans going there, doing their thing behind walls. So, like, nobody sees what's really going on. And this is why I feel like we are coming across and stumbling across Germany every freaking time. Something happens, like the really important things. Someone German is gonna be involved in that shit. I swear, like, Germans, considering the scale of certain countries, and Germany is pretty small, man. It's not a big country, as I can tell because I live here, and it's pretty small. You don't have space, properties are small, way too expensive, you don't get shit for your buck, It's like, everything is small, pretty crowded, but so many important people, institutions, like, for some reason, many things are coming back to Germany. Many roots are from Germany. Germany, for some reason, always plays a very important role, as even in like elite circles. It's insane, actually.
And perhaps some of you who are eagle-eyed will remember the Sofindus name. It was actually one of the companies that was flagged in the Elimination of German Resources for War Committee that we discussed earlier. They specifically called out Sofindus as a core component of the German industrialists' secret plan to capitalize on their hidden reserves outside of Germany. Thankfully, this warning from July of 1945 would be acted on. Sofindus would be seized by the very same people who were working hand in hand with the German industrialists. Mm-hmm. The World Commerce Corporation would absorb all 25 subsidiaries from Sofindus and all of their trading relationships. This raises serious questions about the World Commerce Corporation and its subsidiaries. What exactly were they doing? Well, and by the way, it wasn't just 25 subsidiaries. The World Commerce Corporation had a lot of subsidiaries. How many, I hear you ask? How many could they possibly have? Well, by the end of the 40s, researchers estimate that the World Commerce Corporation had 450 subsidiaries across 45 countries.
Let that sink in. God damn. 450? In 45 countries, pretty much the whole world. This ain't no joke, man.
If you remember, in the Elimination of German Resources for War report, they identified 750 subsidiaries set up in an attempt to exfiltrate German industry abroad. Given that at least 25 of those subsidiaries actually belonged to Sofindus and were absorbed into the WCC, it seems pretty legitimate to ask how many of the other ones may also have been integrated into this vast and mysterious enterprise. There are actually fascinating declassified documents that describe World Commerce Corporation staff as working closely with ex-IG Farben leaders who, and I quote here, are re-establishing their firm's dominant position. The worker in question here was a man called Kenneth Henter, who had apparently formed a close friendship with the head of Deutsche Bank, Hermann Joseph Abs.
Deutsche Bank, bro. Oh, god damn. I mean, Deutsche Bank is something, in case you don't know, it's like, well, it's the German bank, right? I do have a friend that works for the German bank, bro, and I'm always making fun of it because he's like, yeah, well, it's very good. I don't know. Well, maybe he believes that actually, but he's like, yeah, well, it's very, you know, how to say that? How do you say that? Very, very like backed. It's like a very big company, obviously, right? So it's a good company to work for. I'm like, bro, are you kidding me? Like, they are one of the worst, man. Into many scandals, you know, in terms of offering Epstein an account. They said they didn't know, right? Oh, I didn't know about Epstein. I swear, I didn't know that, Mr. Officer. Probably was an accident. Man, it's so funny to see all those connections. And Frankfurt, man. I mean, it's weird. When I'm talking English, I'm actually saying Frankfurt. Like in German way, I would say Frankfurt. For some reason, I do say it like an English person would say something German. You know what I mean? It feels so weird for me. But it's like Frankfurt. So Frankfurt. Talking about also the Rothschilds is something that you hear many times as well. Man. This is all so funny. The world is small, guys, I swear.
Who Adam Labor describes as the linchpin of Nazi finance during the war, alongside Schacht and Schroeder. Perhaps it's not unimaginable that the World Commerce Corporation may have been providing support to post-war Nazi industry and its global footprint. And at the very least, we should consider that the World Commerce Corporation may have been used to funnel resources and infrastructure to some of these subsidiaries and the secret projects and weapons that were being worked on within them. I think that's a possibility that we have to take very seriously. And when Frank T. Ryan, the soon-to-be president of the company, would write in a proposal to the High Commissioner of Germany, General Lucius Clay, the way he would describe what the WCC was capable of is really interesting. He described the company as being capable of building and developing a specific plant, a group of plants, or even an entire industry. That kind of industrial power can be pretty useful, not just for rebuilding Germany, but maybe also for building things in other countries. And what's fascinating is that
or building things in Antarctica. Who knows? Just kidding, you know. Maybe I'm not kidding though. Maybe I am.
Despite its global footprint and hundreds of outposts around the world, the World Commerce Corporation was apparently deeply invested in some very specific locations. Peter Lavender specifically highlights that the World Commerce Corporation was set up to rebuild German South American trade networks. What an interesting function for this specific time in history.
Dude. Oh my god. I'm sorry for interrupting so much, but it's like thinking about all of this. Now think about the narcos, man. Think about the narco shit that is going on in South America. Think about how much money you make off that crap. Right? Think about who might be, as well, taking a big piece of the cake from down there. Knowing that the CIA is one of the biggest drug dealers today. Protecting the opium fields in Afghanistan, right? Well, not anymore. Really? Maybe. I don't know. But, you know, it's thinking about all of this happening. Like, the government is the biggest mafia we have. That's what a little bird whispered into my ear, at least. Man. This could make so much sense. I wonder what kind of connection you find when you dig into that thing, looking into all those narco things and politicians involved. Maybe you have this super old German guy sitting in this palace, bro, being like a king, you know, big, maybe like a big old German Nazis, like the super narco boss, and like Escobar's not even close to be one of the biggest ones. Man, so many possibilities, you know.
And then there's former World Commerce Corporation employee Tom Hill, who would state that the whole idea of the organization was to take advantage of the organizational and international contacts that were set up during the war, the goal being to set up various companies, mostly in Central and South America. Okay, so now we've got this vast, mysterious private intelligence network that is prepared to support big industrial projects with a special focus in South America and West Germany. But what kinds of materials and services could the WCC really provide beyond basic infrastructure?
Right.
Well, what about aerospace?
What about cocaine?
40, 50 feet, why don't you turn around and let them get a view from there and see what the field of view looks like. Go back and into the cable. Okay. Let this turn around to your right. You better. I don't want to go into the sun if I can avoid it. That's right, yeah.
Across the company and across all of their leaders and directors, they maintained huge interests in very interesting aerospace companies. Charles Hambro's seat at the Bank of England gave him unique access to English Electric, a firm that would later be rolled into BAE Systems. That company had also in turn acquired Marconi, the same firm that Guglielmo Marconi oversaw from 1933 to 1939, the years after the Magenta crash that he was purportedly involved in. The Rockefellers and DuPonts had stakes in McDonnell Aircraft Corporation and Piasaki Helicopter. John McCone, the future CIA director, had access to Bechtel. Mooney and Stettinius had access to General Motors and its Opel subsidiary, and Floyd Odlum had a major stake in Convair. On top of these fascinating connections to some very, very interesting aerospace companies, the World Commerce Corporation also had huge control over minerals and mining globally. They had stakes in mines in Peru and Liberia, asbestos mines in Venezuela, gold and minerals in the Philippines. On top of this, Charles Hambro was also deeply enmeshed with Rio Tinto and De Beers, who had deep connections with his bank, Hambro's Bank. And then there was Sir Harold Werner, who we mentioned earlier, who had near total control of diamonds in South Africa.
Dude, oh my god, all those countries, which are pretty much like some of the corruptest countries we have today, like Venezuela and shit, is like, of course they did not leave. Of course they still have their hands in there. And they need money, man. Like so much money. If you remember 9/11, like what happened before that happened? So much money. I forgot how much it was, but I think it was like above, wasn't it like something like 100 English currency? Because in Germany we say we say a million, but then you say billions. So I'm always confused with that. I think it was like 100 billion or something that was missing. Then 9/11 happened and nobody was talking about all those billions that just gone. Like nobody knows where they went, you know? Like they need money for all that shit. Building secret black projects. Try to imagine where all the, well, not all, but like a big part or some of that money with drug trafficking, human trafficking, mines, you know, mining, all those super good, lucrative businesses, where all of this goes. God damn, man, we have so much to discover. I think humanity is not ready for that type of thing, you know? Dude, people are not able to digest that, I swear. Some people probably, and I really don't want to offend anyone, but man, I think some people would rather, you know, jump out from somewhere, let's say, instead of having to digest what has actually been happening in the past. Man.
And none of this is to mention the powerful control this group had over uranium mines in Canada and the Congo. In the post-war era, uranium didn't just feed atomic bombs, but also was being considered for reactors. And reactors were immediately being studied as potential engines for aircraft, missiles, rockets, spacecraft, and exotic high-performance propulsion concepts. Here's a company which is run by people who are demonstrably best friends with the Nazis before the war, who support them even during the war, who help them to evacuate their materials after the war, and who inherit Nazi gold into their new company, which has subsidiaries all around the world trying to facilitate trade between West Germany and South America. They even absorbed some of these Nazi companies, which described as a vast Nazi intelligence network, into their company. And they also have powerful control over minerals, materials, and aerospace. To say that all of this is suspicious is obviously an understatement. But the worst and most suspicious details are still to come.
And somebody would watch this, this documentary, and they would say, no man, he's lying. He's just a tinfoil hat wearing piece of, there are really so many people that would still say, he's just bullshitting. Isn't that insane? Like, okay, bro. Live your life, man. Please, just leave. Do your thing. Leave me alone. This guy looks straight like out of a horror movie, bro. Not even kidding. This one picture, I gotta rewind it for a sec. It was bad. No. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second, guys. This one. Bro. Are you for real? Don't fuck around with that guy.
On the 16th of May 1945, the legendary Nazi commando Otto Skorzeny was arrested and taken into custody. Whilst he was in captivity, he would be interrogated by two very important people. One was the soon-to-be World Commerce Corporation director, Sir Reginald Rex Benson from the Special Operations Executive. The other was the soon-to-be World Commerce Corporation Director Wild Bill Donovan from the Office of Strategic Services. On the 27th of July 1948, Skorzeny would escape captivity under highly suspicious circumstances. Skorzeny is deeply, deeply important. As Peter Levender writes in War, the final entry in the God's Man and War trilogy, Skorzeny represents the more or less public face of a deep underground network of collaborators who seemed to be working on behalf of the United States, or at least of anti-Soviet interests, but who in actuality had different objectives and loyalties. These collaborators included not only military veterans, but committed SS officers who never denounced Nazism, not even long after the war had ended. They included a kind of Nazi intelligentsia of scientists, particularly experts in weapons research and design, who put their expertise and their imagination at the service of the Fourth Reich, while at the same time pretending to work for a more innocent anti-communist league. It is arguable that Skorzeny was the central linchpin in the post-war Nazi world. He was connected to Hjalmar Schacht through his future wife, Isla. He was close with Reinhard Gehlen, who was running intelligence throughout Europe. He worked as a representative for Alfred Krupp around the world. That's the famous industrialist who was rebuilding his empire after the war. Fascinatingly enough, he even worked alongside Wilhelm Voss, Rudolf Schreiber, and Richard Mierter in Egypt after the war. Skorzeny also ran the global Die Spine network, a network of Nazis who were operating around the world post-war. And if there was anyone who would understand the whereabouts of Martin Bormann and other powerful Nazis and...
By the way, it would be called in German die Spinne, right? So spine would be more, or Spine would be more like, you know, the vertebrae, spine. But if you want to call it properly, just saying, it would be called die Spinne, which is the spider, obviously.
And what exactly they were up to, it was Skorzeny. So wouldn't it be fascinating to discover that the connection between Skorzeny and the World Commerce Corporation isn't simply that Donovan and Benson interrogated him at the end of the war. According to Ralph Gannis, both World Commerce Corporation President Frank T. Ryan and Vice President Ricardo Seeker would feature heavily in Skorzeny's papers and correspondences, which he had a chance to look into. Not only this, but Skorzeny would end up in Madrid after the war, the same location where that vast Sophendus network was apparently being run from. Frank Ryan was the OSS station chief for Spain during World War II, and after the war, in his capacity as the president of the World Commerce Corporation, Ryan would make frequent trips to Madrid. Ricardo Seeker was also based in that city. And fascinatingly, he and his other friends lived in the same building as Otto Skorzeny.
Oops.
American author Robert Rourke would also live there too, and would also feature in Skorzeny's papers. In articles that he would write about his antics in Spain, he would describe his group as resembling the secret society that strides the world. What a fascinating phrase, especially since this group would later be closely tied to the Kennedy assassination. But that's a discussion for a whole different video. What's most important here is the close proximity and ongoing communication between the World Commerce Corporation leadership and Otto Skorzeny, who was the public face of the Nazi underground, the same one which the World Commerce Corporation was already deeply enmeshed with. Could it be that Skorzeny was actually working with the World Commerce Corporation? Well, to answer that question, perhaps we should turn to our final witness, Aline Griffith. Griffith would join the World Commerce Corporation and work directly for Frank Ryan in Madrid. And her description of what was going on was absolutely astonishing. My boss at the time was Frank Ryan, who had been the chief of SI for Spain and Portugal in Washington. I had the impression that I would eventually be organizing networks for information on Soviet intelligence activities. I was scheduled to move to Prague to open offices there when I married. Only 40 years later did I learn that this company was not openly being used as a cover for US government intelligence, even though everyone I saw and worked with during the 2 years in that job had been an OSS agent in one country or another. The company's setup seems to have been a precursor to the Iran-Contra situation, where sales from private companies were used to bolster pro-US groups in a foreign country.
Wow.
Just to interrupt here quickly, Iran-Contra was all about arms trafficking to support covert operations. And this wouldn't be the last time that the WCC would be linked to arms trafficking. Its subsidiary, Commerce International China, according to Peter Dale Scott, employed mob figure Sonny Fasoulis to procure arms for Taiwan. This is really important, by the way. Arms trafficking doesn't just refer to guns and helmets and ammunition. It also frequently involves aerospace technology and components. It's not enough just to build aerospace tech and to mine critical resources. You also need to have a trafficking network to move things around globally in a covert manner. But it's what Griffith reveals next that's the ultimate revelation. Towards the end of her life, she would share astonishing information that changes the way we see the World Commerce Corporation forever. She would state, "It was after 8 or 9 years. Otto came in as leader, and everything changed. Everything went through him. For me, it was better. With the transfer to Otto, we were far more sophisticated, more weapons at our use. Anything, really. Stuff I didn't know that we had use of. It became very sophisticated, more widespread. I was soon out of it. I didn't want to know half of what we were doing."
He's a big player.
Given the wider context that we've drawn up about Benson, Donovan, Ryan, and Seeker, I think there can only be one Otto that she's discussing. Otto Skorzeny, the head of the Nazi underground, came in as leader of the World Commerce Corporation. Those are her literal words.
Bro.
Griffith says, Otto Skorzeny came in as leader and everything went through him.
Well,
Earlier, I described the World Commerce Corporation in terms of the British and American elite. But with Otto Skorzeny taking a leadership role, that effectively means the World Commerce Corporation now also had access to the Nazi underground. This means that it's not out of the question to consider people like Martin Bormann, Klaus Barbie, Heinrich Müller, and other people who were working in the Nazi underground as effectively being part of this same WCC network. Think of all the people working for IG Farben, AEG, Siemens, and Krupp. All those people sent to those 750 subsidiaries to work on new weapons, as we heard earlier. And then, of course, there was Hjalmar Schacht and Reinhard Gehlen and all these other post-war Nazis who were operating out in the open, who I think we can arguably claim would have had connections to the same WCC group. Suddenly, the world in World Commerce Corporation takes on a whole new meaning. This was a fusion of the most brutal fascist power across all three nations: Britain, the United States, and Nazi Germany. The British elite didn't care about democracy. Democratic reform removed their privileges and their funding. The American elite had similar sentiments. They resisted regulation and worked together to protect their own interests. We know that's the same for the pre-war German industrialists too. But the Nazis who ran the Nazi war machine also didn't care about democracy or liberalism. These three groups together constituted a rebirth of this same fraternity network, this time in a horrifying new form. With access to resources, aerospace technology, advanced science, secret research facilities, endless funding, control of the media, access to royalty and the Vatican, and total control of transnational finance, and with all the secret intelligence gleaned during the war. There's never been an organization quite like the World Commerce Corporation.
God damn, Jason.
By now, I wonder if you're beginning to notice something. In case you hadn't caught on, the World Commerce Corporation has a number of interesting traits. Traits that you and I have been looking for quite a while now. Traits that the Maynard Consortium from DeLonge's Secret Machines novels is described as having. Remember, the Maynard Consortium was, number one, a private organization founded in the late 40s. Number two, would inherit money from mysterious Swiss bank accounts. 3, was co-run by Western elites with German Nazi figures. 4th, had mysterious shadow corporations and subsidiaries. And 5th, had a way to funnel money and technology into secret aerospace projects in third world countries. Could the World Commerce Corporation be the real-life Maynard Consortium? I don't have DeLonge to whisper into my ear and tell me that the answer is yes, but let me tell you something. There is a lot more information after the war to dig into. We have basically spent an hour and a half here digging into this huge story to climax to the point where I think we can identify the World Commerce Corporation as literally being the Maynard Consortium. But We haven't even talked about what happens after 1945. Believe me, that story is unbelievably compelling, and after you see it, you're going to be even more convinced that we have identified the real thing. Something important to note here is I do think that DeLonge simplified the story in his fictionalization. There are other organizations that overlap with the WCC that are important, other networks and other mechanisms that we'll talk about in part 2. In Secret Machines, I think it's kept very simple for the sake of storytelling, but believe me, there is a real tangible story about what happens next. And as part of that story, we're also going to be dealing with the important 6th point, the 6th quality that the Maynard Consortium has. And that's that it leads to the establishment and funding of a mysterious entity called SWEEP in 1964. The truth is, I don't think anyone can know what SWEEP is. According to DeLonge, there is no documentation, no reference on the internet. It truly is a deep state secret that only a few people know about. But in DeLonge's story, there are certain details that can help you identify what might have been going on. And when I show them to you, you are going to be utterly blown away, I promise you. So please subscribe to the channel. Please consider becoming a Patreon, because what we're going to cover next is going to be absolutely incredible. Get ready for Nazis building UFOs in Egypt, secret space programs, the Vatican's global money laundering network, Ian Fleming's encoded message in the James Bond novels, Iran-Contra, a drug empire, and how all of this fits together into a story that you can't possibly imagine. I want to say a huge thank you for joining me on this journey. If you knew how much time this video has taken,
yes,
you would weep. This has been months in the making, 5 or 6 months of research, months on this video alone. I've re-recorded 3 times. You might be able to tell by changes in coloration. Had to re-edit, re-investigate, redo this a lot, and I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me, but I just want you to know this was a serious enterprise, and part 2 is going to be big and serious too. I've edited this video myself. You can probably tell there are some quite amateur mistakes. I've literally used iMovie with PowerPoint animations to fuse it together because I'm trying to save money. If you care about what I'm doing right now, if you care about this story, if you think it's important, if you want to pull the thread and find out what's next, please consider becoming a Patreon. Your money is going to help pay for editors in part 2 to make sure that the production is as slick and compelling as the story itself. Because I really believe we're going to pull on something significant here, and I really want to make it as good as possible. So please consider supporting the channel. If you can't do it, please don't feel bad. If you're saying I can only pay £1 a month or whatever, and I don't have a tier to support that, then just don't pay, it's okay. I'm only asking people who have extra money and can spend that money, and if you don't, it's free and it will always be free for you. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. All that's left to say is, my name's Jason Samosa. This has been Jason Samosa's Ufology Moments, and until next time, cheers.
Wow, Jason, man. You blew me away, brother. I have to become a Patreon for sure, man. Support you, bro. This was, and I told this in my first live stream, I was like, dude, this editing probably took like ages, because I know from doing those videos on my own, well, not the, well, I don't research that deep, right? I haven't done anything that big, but I know how much freaking work it is. I know how much work it is to edit all of that stuff. Dude, this is insane. And it's... I knew we will come to the part of drug trafficking, right? Because I told you, drugs have to be something because it's just so much money involved, bro. But this is insane. Otto Skorzeny, I think, right? Otto Skorzeny? Skorzeny. I didn't read the book from Tom DeLonge of the Secret Machines, so now I know what he means in terms of the Maynard Corporation and stuff. So like a synonym name, right? But like the World Commerce Corporation. I'm watching you. Is it still existing? Is it still a thing? Man, this documentary is insane. Wow. I seriously don't even know what to say about that anymore. Give me 1 second, guys. I just gotta look. The World Corporation. No, World Commerce Corporation. Is it still doing shit? The World Commerce Corporation. Give me 1 second. Just gotta look that up because, man. I'm just gonna research it. Wow. So, just want to show you. So yes. The World Council of... I don't mean that, bro. Give me a second, guys. You see, they are not even showing the company, even though it's probably gonna be a much bigger thing. Okay, well, I was writing it right. I doubted for a second. I thought I was researching wrong in that thing. I thought I spelled it wrong, but it was actually right. So, is the World Commerce Corporation from the Nazi era still active, and what is it doing? No, there is no active organization called the World Commerce Corporation or a close equivalent that originated as a Nazi era entity and continues operating today under that or a similar name. So, World Commerce Corporation. Well, pretty much what I was typing. This was a post-World War II private trading company originally from September. It's a British American Canadian and more actively launched around 47. La 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 la. Yes. Contacts with figures like Otto Scorzini, there we go, or other shadowy activities, but primary contemporary reporting frames it as a business venture by allied linked industrials and intelligence veterans. Reports indicate it largely wound down or was liquidated, sometimes cited around 62 for tax reasons, with some corporate records extending later in certain jurisdictions. Unrelated modern companies share similar names. Well, okay. So no real information, I would say. No information that would give me anything that I can make of something. Well, okay. I can tell they don't want to tell us. What a surprise. Right? Well, guys, we made it. I hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you enjoyed it. I thank everyone who listened and followed and stood with me and enjoyed the documentary. Man, also, please consider, if you enjoyed what we just looked at, consider subscribing to Jason Samosa's channel, become a Patreon, because as you can tell, he's been doing a lot of work and putting a lot of effort into this documentary, and I cannot wait for the second part. I wonder if it's out already. Didn't look at his channel, but I have to. Definitely have to. There's going to be more from this guy. Great work. I'm super inspired now to dig more into all of that stuff. God damn, I have to read more of Joseph Farrell's books. But I gotta be honest, I'm a bit of a lazy reader when it comes to books, to take the time, you know, and just relax, get off the social media shit and stop flooding my brain with dopamine, man. I'm a victim, at least to some degree. We probably all are, right? Well, thank you for your time, as I said, and man, I'm gonna see you again. Well, today is Friday. Well, I try to bring out another video on Monday. I know it's just been live streams lately. Gonna make a video though as well. But other than that, gonna be another live stream, definitely. I will let you know, and so that you don't miss any updates, consider subscribing to the channel in case you didn't. This would also help me a ton to make this channel grow, man, and yeah, watch more stuff like this. So guys, I hope you have a good weekend, and well, enjoy the time with your loved ones, and I'm gonna see you in the next video or the next live stream. We're truly living in a crazy world, guys. I will definitely need some time to digest all of this. You probably will too, and I'm gonna watch this video definitely more times, because there's so much info that we can get out of that. And if we really let that stuff sink into our brains, we will just make connections everywhere, right? Like you can make so many dots into every direction just looking at this thing, trying to expand on where they have their ties. And man, it's, as you can tell, my brain is cooking. Well, anyways, guys, I'm gonna make a move. See you on the next one. I'm out of here, guys. Till then.